Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss everything there is to know about fantasy football. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah.
Hey, and I'm Anthony.
And we got a lot to talk about for you guys today. You know how to set up your lineups. We're going to talk about our favorite players who to start, who you think you should sit on your lineups. That'll be at the end of the show. We're going to talk about a little bit of players, that are for real or not. But we're going to get started with last night's Thursday night game between the New Orleans Saints versus the Carolina Panthers. And wasn't really a whole lot to get excited about in fantasy. Drew Brees did put up really good points in garbage time, because remember the Saints were they were down by 20 to 17 points, 17 to 20 points last night. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a whole lot to get excited about in fantasy. There was some decent performances, but not really to put you over the top to get you through a very good week. Probably, I think the best fantasy performance in this game was from Drew Brees. He had 285, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. So that's probably the best performance of the night in fantasy perspective.
Yeah, no one really broke out. Got like a 20-point day or something like that, at least as far as NFL.com is concerned for their fantasy leagues. Drew Brees, 285, 2 touchdowns. He was the best, for going by NFL.com rankings. He had the best 15.4 fantasy points. Tim Hightower was the next one, 12.6. Cam Newton didn't even have 200 yards passing, but at least he did have a touchdown. Then you get Ted Ginn, who had the 1 touchdown, 13 yards rushing. All of them got over 10 points as far as fantasy football goes, but no one really had that kind of breakout, great game. Cam Newton, rushing the ball wasn't the same. He had 7 yards rushing. Didn't get you anything rushing as far as yards or touchdowns. Drew Brees didn't even throw for over 300 yards. So as a collective, there was nothing really that stood out to you fantasy football-wise. You had a good game as far as the ending goes. Like, it was a close game at the end, but it was a blowout at halftime, and it looked like it was going to be a blowout. The Panthers have a, now history, I guess, over the last couple of weeks where they allow teams to come back into the game, but at the end they hold on. And fantasy football-wise, it was okay day, but it was nothing. It was, the 2 quarterbacks that you might have actually started, Drew Brees, you would assume you would start him, and he got you an okay day, but nothing outstanding. Yeah,
he didn't. No one really stood out in this game, and I think overall it was kind of a boring game.
Right.
But, let's talk about the running backs here. Jonathan Stewart did get a touchdown, which was nice because that saved his fantasy day, because he only had 31 yards on 18 carries against a Saints defense. Don't get me wrong, to be fair, they have been playing better lately, but Saints have been probably one of the worst defenses this season. So, I don't know, is that like some concern about Jonathan Stewart here in the Carolina Panthers offense? Like, if they can't put up any good numbers against, a defense like this, what does it say about the Carolina Panthers offense? Was it because it was a Thursday night game, so is that why their offense was off?
Thursday helps, Thursday helps with that, even though, the game was in Carolina. It's still one of the things where Thursday night, you never really look at the game that much as far as the numbers go, because they're so hard to figure out, because you have a team that you would like to have a whole week off, but you only give them 3 days, and you're saying, all right, cool, here, have fun. I don't care about, your body hurting, whatever else like that. You get less days, go. But now you get a little bit of time off. Now you get basically 9 days off until you got to go to Oakland to face the Raiders, but then you got to go to Seattle after that. I wouldn't expect a lot from Jonathan Stewart, honestly. He started off strong at least, against New Orleans before, and against Arizona, 85 and 95 yards for those 2 games, 2 touchdowns each. Since then, he's faced L.A., which does have a very good defense, and Kansas City, same thing, good defense. And this game, short week, and I said the game's coming up at Oakland, and even though Oakland's defense isn't good, you have to go at Oakland, then you have to go at Seattle. I wouldn't expect much out of Jonathan Stewart. I mean, yeah, he got the 31 and a touchdown, which is nice, which basically gets you to about 10 fantasy points, but I don't expect it to basically be anything that, 15, 20 points, something like that. I think you just have an okay game, but I wouldn't expect a lot out of him.
Yeah, I can't expect a lot out of him here, especially heading towards the the playoffs here, which could happen, which is going to happen probably about 4 weeks, I think, I'm assuming. But moving on to the New Orleans Saints running backs, Mark Ingram got banged up in this game. There was a hard hit that he took in the second half. He left the game, so Tim Hightower took over the role as the leading dog in the backfield. So Tim Hightower finished the game with 69 yards on 12 carries, which looks like a very good yards per carry ratio. And then Mark Ingram, he finished for 28 yards on 7 carries. So it looks like Mark Ingram could maybe miss time, but then again, he does have 10 days to recover. So I don't know who do you want to trust here in the Saints backfield. Like, if Mark Ingram cannot go, you have to go with Hightower. But Hightower, he has flashed at times, but then again, he was a backup for a reason, and we've seen that. So I say, I don't know who to trust in this backfield here.
See, I would trust, going forward, I'd probably trust Hightower because you don't know what's going to happen with Mark Ingram. And to be fair with someone like Hightower, he has been somebody over the last few weeks that's gotten you both rushing and receiving, right? So he got 69 rushing, 57 receiving this last week, helping out Mark Ingram. Week before, 21-34, nothing big against Denver. Before that, 87-15. So there's been 2 out of the last 3 weeks actually 3 out of the last 4 weeks where he's had 100 total yards, either rushing or receiving, because the week before that he had 102 against Seattle. I would trust him the most, right? Because Mark Ingram is one of the things where he's been hit or miss, right? It's either he's had a really, really good week or he's been somewhat okay, but you can't really trust him, right? Because now he has a thing with concussions, Mark Ingram I'm talking about. But before that, he had 158 yards against the Niners, but the Niners. We talked about that before. You basically start whatever running back you have if it's against the Niners.
Or the Browns.
Or the Browns, to be fair.
Unless you're Terrence West from the Baltimore Ravens.
And then against Denver, he only had 50 yards. And against the Panthers, he had 28 yards and 47 yards. But like I said, injured. And injuries have been kind of a thing with him. He hasn't been exactly the same dude. So I would trust Hightower a little bit more because he can get you basically 100 yards 3 of the last 4 weeks. I would trust him more going forward.
Yeah, I'm going to have to trust Hightower, or I would probably lean towards Hightower at this point because remember, he's still highly involved in the passing game despite Mark Ingram still involved in this offense. Don't forget, Mark Ingram is still involved in the passing game as well. He did have 47 yards in the passing game. But, it looks like Hightower can get you 120 yards in the game despite, despite rushing under 100 yards. He is...
Still get you 120 yards total offense, yeah.
This is a team that passes a lot, so that's probably something you have to look at. Right. As for the receivers on both these teams, the only 2 players from the Saints that caught a touchdown was Kobe Fleener, Brandon Coleman. I'm pretty sure everyone and their mama started Brandon Coleman last night. I don't know. I'm kidding.
I mean,
that was a joke. That was a joke. Maybe I know some people maybe still may have Kobe Fleener, but I think most fantasy owners might have dropped him from the team. As for the Panthers, Calvin Benjamin only got 56 yards. Ted Ginn was the only one in this group that had a touchdown.
Right.
So not a whole lot of receivers that stood out in this game. Michael Thomas was the leading receiver of all both teams with 68. He was kind of training towards being a must start. So maybe that the Thursday night game, the fact that it was on Thursday, maybe kind of played a factor in these, both of these groups of receivers underperforming. Maybe I kind of think it was the fact that this game was on Thursday. I think if this game was on Sunday, I think a lot of these.
I think it'd been a lot better.
I think a lot of these, honestly, I think a lot of these players and the running backs, quarterbacks, would have had better numbers.
Oh yeah, 100%. You take a team that basically had about 20 or 30 times colliding into each other, basically saying that's like a car crash. So you have basically 20 or 30 car crashes every single game. And now you're going to tell them 3 days later, okay, that's fine, especially in New Orleans. Okay, cool. Now you're going to go to Carolina, go play the Panthers, go play that defense with Luke Kuechly, go play Thomas Davis, go play all these guys, go have fun. It's one of those things where it's like your body hurts and you're not going to be as smooth and you're not going to be as crisp as you were if you had more time off, to where you can basically just like lay down and rest and not have to worry about it for a handful of days. Yeah,
it's always tough to, start players who play on Thursday unless they're like a clear-cut stud.
Right.
Like, AJ Green or Odell Beckham.
Sure, yeah.
But, we're just, remember, we do got 3 Thursday night games next week.
Right.
So maybe there's some hope for more fantasy performers there. But we're going to take our first break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, and we're going to talk about some players who we kind of been trending upward, whose stock is rising, and we're going to say if they're for real or not. So we're going to take a break here at the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. Okay, so we talked about Thursday Night Football. Now we're going to go into a little bit of a for real segment, which basically all that means, if you haven't listened before, we're going to talk about, people who have had kind of an uptick in the recent weeks, and we're going to see, if they can be consistently kept up, or if this is basically just a couple of weeks where they're going to fade away. We're not going to hear from them again. So, start with you, Jeremiah. Who is the one that you kind of are wondering, for real, not for real? Who's your guy?
I don't know if I'm wondering, but I feel like we need to talk about this player.
Mm-hmm.
He's been lights out for the past couple of weeks, and I talked about him I talked about him briefly on Tuesday in the top performers segment. I'm gonna have to go Marcus Mariota here.
Okay,
we have to talk about him. I kind of feel like we kind of been annoying him for a little bit. He hasn't been talked about highly in fantasy, because he's been very, very relevant in fantasy. He's playing like an every week starter, and I know the teams that he played, the defenses that he plays, kind of does speak well to his numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But he played, but he just I just see something else than just the fact that he's playing teams. He has really command of the Tennessee Titans offense. He has command of it. He has a lot of help in the running game, which is helping him a lot in the passing game. He doesn't have a whole lot of top-notch guys at receiver, but he's making them work. He's kind of making them better, so to speak. He does have Delaney Walker, who I think is a very good tight end in this league. His top receivers are Rashard Matthews, Taji Sharp, and Wright. I forgot his first name for some reason.
So you look at exactly. You're talking about with the Tennessee Titans, right? And you talk about a team that we didn't have any expectations to the start of the year, right? We thought basically the team was just going to be kind of one of those like middling, kind of like call it 6-10, 7-9 maybe kind of teams. But with Kendall Wright, Tajay Sharp, and Rashard Matthews, Delaney Walker, he has people who aren't great, but they help him out enough, right? He's, got basically 2,500 yards so far. And if you look at him through a fantasy perspective, again, going through NFL.com, the last, 2 weeks, 25.92 and 27.8 against the Packers and the Chargers. A little bit of a down week against the Jaguars, but again, that could be the thing of when you play the Jaguars, you do all these things in the first half, third quarter, then you kind of rest at the end because you're beating them by so many points. Before that, he had 16.68 against Indianapolis, but 27.76 against Cleveland, and a little over 30.52 against Miami. Basically, since, week 5, he's been a quarterback who's been a lot better than you thought he would be. He's been a guy who's been someone who, kind of out of the blue has been a top 5 to 10, fantasy quarterback. 295 last week against the Packers, 313 against the Chargers, 270 against the Jaguars, and then only 284 against the Browns, but 3 touchdowns against Miami, 163. But again, 3 touchdowns. If you take the last 6 weeks that he's played, he has 17 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. That's really, really, really good.
It's really good. And I think something else I want to point out that may be a little bit of concern about Mariota is that he's not rushing the ball a lot like he used to, or sure. We thought he would. His highest rushing total was 64 yards against the Browns in Week 6.
Right.
After that, his highest total is 14 yards. He didn't even have a rushing yard against the Packers, but with the way that he's throwing the ball, I don't think anyone really cares at this point.
Yeah.
We know he has speed. He's very athletic, but he's easily maturing as a legit passer in this league.
That's the thing. So, you don't have to worry so much about him rushing because it's one of the things of he has it kind of thing, right? Like you don't have to worry about him running all the time. Just the fact that it's a possibility is one of those things that kind of, it's always in the back of your head kind of thing, right? Like he said the same where he had 64 yards, highest was 41. Last week, his highest was, I guess, 6 yards. But before that, a 14-yard run against the Colts, a 14-yard run against the Dolphins, a 21-yard run. So worst case scenario, he can do it, which is all you really need. If you're a quarterback, you don't have to be Michael Vick. You don't have to be Randall Cunningham. You don't have to be somebody like that runs all the time. As long as you basically give the defense pause, right? As long as they're kind of like, we kind of have to have someone contain to basically keep him honest, that's all you really need, and which the thing is he's very good at doing. All right, so that's your guy with Marcus Mariota. So we're going to stay in the 2015 NFL draft.
The guy that got drafted
right before him. So I'm going to go with Jameis Winston, right? Jameis Winston, we talked about Mariota, how he's ascending, right? How he's basically, doing better and better and better. And with the Tennessee Titans now, with the weeks coming, you're going to have a game against the Colts and Bears. He can have good weeks. With Jameis Winston, he's very inconsistent, right? He started off the season against Atlanta, 281 yards and 4 touchdowns. Great. Next week at Arizona, 243, but a touchdown and 4 interceptions. Very bad. Next week against the LA Rams.
Raiders?
They'll probably go to LA too. Who knows?
They might.
405 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then against Denver, 179, 0, and 2. Like he's hit and miss, hit and miss, hit and miss. Even recently, right? Against the Bears, 312 yards, 2 touchdown interceptions. Against Atlanta, he had 261, 3 touchdowns. Against Oakland, 180, only 180 yards, but 2 touchdowns, right? He's had a good start. He had a good, last few games recently, but they're only 2-2 in the last 4 games. Like I said, they lost to Oakland and they lost to Atlanta. And even though he's had the touchdowns, as far as passing goes, he hasn't been as high as you hoped he would be. And again, for fantasy football purposes, you want it to be a little bit better. He's somebody who, has the capabilities. Like we saw how good he was when he was in college. You saw at Florida State that he was a guy that could run around, and he still could do that. They saw this play. I don't know if you saw this gif that they had against the Bears, where he basically got almost sacked, kind of ran around, and completed the pass, right? He's a guy who's not the most accurate of passers. He only is completing 60% of his passes the whole season. Last week, 23 of 33, but against the Raiders, like I said, 180 yards, but 16 of 32. He'll get you yards, but he's really inaccurate with what he's doing. And now, if you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're a team that's kind of in the middle of the division. They're 4-5, but now they're going to face at Kansas City Chiefs and Seattle the week after that. He's got a hard stretch for the next 2 games, and I'm not sure he can keep up the good start he's been having now that he's going to have to go against these two good defensive teams.
Yeah, it's tough for me to say if Jameis Winston is for real. And it's oddly enough, I actually thought Jameis Winston was going to have more success than
still only a second year, so he could
than Mariota would have right now.
Right,
but it seems like Mariota has kind of gotten better since these two got drafted. Don't get me wrong, I think Jameis Winston's still talented enough to be a good quarterback in the NFL. I just think he's going through a little bit of growing pains still. We have seen the potential. The potential is there. I just think right now, I think Jameis Winston's more of a streamer, or maybe like a back end QB1.
Right.
Unless you have two quarterback leagues, then you have to get him.
Yeah.
But he's not an every week starter like Mariota's. I think Mariota is a legit every week starter that you can kind of like start like heading towards the playoffs.
100%.
So, yeah, that's all I could say in Jameis Winston. But we're going to take our second break here. After going to me, Constance Fantasy Football Podcast, and when we come back, we're going to tell you guys who to start and who to sit, like we always end every show on Friday. But we'll be back here to Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, and we're going to get into our start and sit of the week. But before we get that, Anthony, I got something to tell the listeners here how they should start their day.
How's that?
Well, whenever I wake up, I look myself in the mirror, and I'm like, man, you are beautiful. But that's it's not the only thing, though.
It's very vain
of
you, but
I could probably clean up a little bit, and I do it with the razor from Harry's. Have you used the razor?
I have. No, they're fantastic. They're really good.
Yeah, they work. They're very smooth.
Yeah,
very smooth. Smoothest thing I've ever used. When I was shaving, but I got something to tell you guys about Harry's in general. They're real legit product, a real legit company. But big razor companies, they always make like a small change, and they always come out with like the quote unquote newest version of razors. Yeah. They always raise their prices, which are already high.
Oh, I spent so much money on razors. It's so much money. It's not even funny. But yeah, sorry, go.
But unlike those guys, Anthony, Harry's doesn't believe in upcharging.
No, they're really good with that.
Yeah, which is why they made the razors even better and are keeping prices exactly the same, Anthony.
That's
exactly the same.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, it's to keep it the same because they even have the little things. Have you ever seen like when you go to the grocery store, right? They have the razor blades in the little like protective case. Like you have to like reach under the thing, which I feel like is borderline stealing, even though I'm not stealing them. Like it's one of those things. Like it's because it's so expensive, But like I said with Harry's, it's cheap, which is so much nicer.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to tell you guys what they include. The Harry's 5-blade razors. They include the softer flex hinge for a more comfortable glide, a trimmer blade for hard-to-reach places, a lubricating strip, a texture handle for more control when it's wet, and that's actually very useful every time I use it.
Absolutely.
Harry's is so confident in the quality of their blades. They're going to send you their popular free trial set when it comes to a razor fly blade cartridge and a shaving gel. All that comes in the free trial set. And if you get your free trial set, when you subscribe, when you just pay $3 for shipping, just $3 for shipping. You can't beat that.
No. Really
so plus, I have a special offer for the listeners out here, Anthony. If you guys out there listening, if you enter the code GSMC at checkout, you get a post shave balm for free with your order, and that has been useful as well. I've used it. It works really good.
Exactly.
And it makes me feel fresh, and I'm like, man, I look good again. So go to harrys.com right now, guys, and enter code GSMC at checkout to claim your free trial set and post shave balm. That's harrys.com. That's HARRYS.com. But yeah, we're going to get into some start and sit here. Anthony, we got a lot of players we're going to talk about that we want to start in our our lineups, sit in our lineups. So you want to go first? You want me to start?
Yeah, so I'll go first. All right, so as far as start and sit goes, I'm going to start with LeGarrette Blount for the New England Patriots. Why am I saying LeGarrette Blount needs to be your starter? He's to go against the San Francisco 49ers. What we've seen with the San Francisco 49ers is if you are a running back and you are going against the San Francisco 49ers, you get 100 yards. It's like the Oprah thing. You get 100 yards, you get 100 yards, everybody gets 100 yards.
Everyone gets 100 yards.
Everybody gets 100 yards. And I'm thinking LeGarrette Blount won't be any different, right? He's been someone who's been, a pretty consistent running back all year. Like, maybe he's not in the, Ezekiel Elliott kind of scenario where it's clearly he's the best player running back in the NFL. But at the same time, he's been a really good player for the New England Patriots, kind of been the steadying force or whatever for them. You look at the season that he's had up to this point. He had 123 yards against the Dolphins. He had 105 against the Houston Texans, 127 against the Steelers. Even a game against the Cincinnati Bengals, he only had 50 yards rushing, but he had a touchdown and he had 20 yards receiving. So, with him, like I said, San Francisco 49ers, you start him. Now, he's somebody who I think could be a really good game. You could also say the same thing about Tom Brady. You could also say the same thing about Wes Welker. I understand he doesn't play for the team anymore. I don't care. Start him. Start Edelman. I don't care. I don't care. Not the point. Start him. Gronkowski. He's got a punctured lung. Start him. Everybody. Drew Bledsoe. Start him. Everybody. Ty Law. Start him. Everybody. Vince Wilfork. Start him. Everybody. Everybody's been associated with the Patriots. Randy Moss.
Even start Rodney Harrison.
Rodney Harrison. Randy Moss. Start him. Everybody. Start him.
Wow.
But anyways.
I agree. I literally think, all kidding aside.
No, but yeah, all kidding aside, I think he's going to have a really good game.
No, all kidding aside, I really do think guys like Julian Edelman, Martellus Bennett, even James White, because Dion Lewis is slowly going to come back. Sure, right. I would even start Dion Lewis, too, if you want. I would start him as a flex.
Yeah, might as well.
So, anybody on this Patriots team that's relevant and gets a lot of snaps and a lot of plays,
right.
You got to start them. This has been the golden matchup against the team that wears gold.
Yep, exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, and it's not a coincidence either. They just stink really, really bad.
Yep.
And, but I got a player, actually, it's actually surprising. We are so harsh on the 49ers here.
We are.
I'm actually going to show them a little bit of love in this segment, and I think you should. I think Colin Kaepernick is a legit starter this week.
Okay, you brought this up, and I looked at you very confused, like very.
You did.
Well, because you said start Colin Kaepernick. I was like, do you not understand how this segment works? I feel like you don't understand how this segment works. I feel like you got dyslexic a little bit, and you like the start and said you just like kind of mash him like.
Oh no, I get it perfectly. I get how it works perfectly.
Okay, explain.
But he's playing. He's been playing really well. He looks a lot more comfortable with Chip Kelly's offense. And don't get me wrong, I'm not being a homer here, but the Patriots. There's an important stat here I want to point out to you, Anthony. The Patriots are 31st in a adjusted sack rate with just 16 takedowns on the year. So that means they're 31st and sacking the quarterback whenever they're playing. Whenever the quarterback moves out of the pocket. You've seen how the Patriots defense played last week with Russell Wilson.
Right.
And don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing Colin Kaepernick with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's on a whole different level. But what does Kaepernick do best?
Yeah,
that is running with the football.
Yeah.
But, ever since the Week 8 bye, Kaepernick has finished as a top 10 starter week to week. He was the number 8 quarterback against the Saints, number 5 against the Cardinals, an actual good defense for that matter. They were in that game. So, he has a lot high volume as a runner. It raises the floor. Without that, I would not recommend him. But he over the 4 games that he has started, his small sample size of rushing has been, pretty good. He has been pretty good. His rushing numbers come out to 228 and a touchdown. That's in his ever since he started.
That's in 4 starts,
ever
basically.
Since he started, he. Against the Bills and the Bucks, he had really high rushing numbers. He had 10 attempts at rushing against the Cardinals. That's his most of the year. He did play his best game against the Saints 2 weeks ago, but that was the Saints defense.
Right.
But we've seen how they been playing the last couple weeks. I I think the fact that he runs really raises his ceiling a little bit. So I would take a shot at Kaepernick this week. And remember, I'm not going to say the 49ers are going to win. I do think there's a chance for Kaepernick to make most of his production in garbage time. Shout out to Katie Nolan.
Shout out to Katie Nolan. Right.
Katie Nolan there, yeah.
No, and that's totally true, right? Because there's a couple people that do this, right? The whole garbage time thing. Blake Bortles is one of those guys that does that a lot. And like Blake Bortles is the guy that'll be down 36-10 or whatever. And it's like, all right, let's throw these garbage time touchdowns.
Shout out to Katie Nolan.
Shout out to Katie Nolan. And it's one of those things where, we're doing fantasy football, right? We're not doing like actual like people we want to start like as a team, right? This is fantasy football wise. And then you said with Colin Kaepernick, he's been a good quarterback, statistically throughout the year. Blake Bortles, every single game he'll get you about 250 to 300 yards passing, get you a couple of touchdowns. It'll get you even a couple of things rushing the ball. Like he had 54 yards against the Kansas City Chiefs, 33 against the Raiders. He'll get you a little bit here and there. He had a touchdown against the Colts rushing. Like he's someone who will slowly get you these points. So I would say even start him because you look at the Detroit Lions passing defense, they're only 18th, right? They're lower level as far as that goes, as far as passing defense for the Lions, and that's who he's going to go against. So I would start Blake Bortles as well. But now, as far as sitting goes, right? So we got our starters. Now we got someone who you'd want to sit. And as far as sitting goes, I would say that's Jordan Howard. And it's someone who's had a good, season so far. He's had 4 games where he had over 100 or more yards rushing. Last week he had exactly 100 against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Week before that, he had over 200 yards total offense against the Vikings, rushing and receiving. And he's somebody who, the only reason why I'm saying sit him this week is because he's going against the Giants. And while the Giants aren't necessarily a great team, as far as yards given up on the ground, they're 5th in the NFL, right? So they only have given up 829 yards and only, as far as yards per average, they're 6th in only 3.6 yards per carry. So they're a team that's very good defensively. And for the Bears, that's all you have. You have Jordan Howard. Jay Cutler, he stinks. He had a good game when he came back and is like, hey, Jay Cutler, this is going to be great. We can rely on him again. Yay, Jay Cutler. He stinks.
No, wrong.
He came back the next week.
Wrong.
He stinks. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about your compliments. He doesn't care about your complaints. He doesn't care about anything you say. He's going to be Jay Cutler. He's going to throw 182 yards, 2 interceptions, and only 1 touchdown last week against the Buccaneers. He stinks. He's no good. Jordan Howard's the only one you have to worry about, and the rushing defense for the Giants is good. So I would say if you have him, even though it kind of hurts, and he's someone who's been relied on, I wouldn't trust him this week.
Yeah, and a running back that I can't trust this week is Ryan Matthews from Philadelphia Eagles. We were told and we were lied that Darren Sproles was the number 1 running back in this offense. We were stabbed in the back on that one. Mm-hmm. But Ryan Matthews, he had probably his best game of the year.
Yes, he did.
He had, I don't know, probably maybe in his career. I haven't seen him play that good since he was at Fresno State, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
He's been in the league for about 4 years.
Right.
No, 7 years actually. Wow, that's a long time.
He's played a while.
No, that's a long time. What?
But now who's he playing? Matthews, who's the team he's going against?
He's playing the Seahawks. He's playing at Seattle too. So yeah, it's going to be bearing a lot of problems there for the Eagles all around. He did have over 130 total yards, and he did have two touchdowns.
Yep. But
that was against the Falcons defense at home.
Yeah.
I can't give him a chance against the Seahawks, and Seattle was a number 2 run defense, and they just allowed 3.4 yards a carry. So remember, LeGarrette Blount did score 3 times against the Seahawks, which is your guy to start.
Yep.
But he only averaged 3.2 yards a carry in that game. So I don't think the Eagles are going to get anywhere near the goal line in this game in any parts of it. I kind of think Seahawks are going to win this game pretty handily. Mm-hmm. So I would just stay away from Matthews at this point. Unless you really don't have anybody else, then that's the only way I would start him. But I would stay away from Matthews this week.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. Someone who, even though he had a great game last week, I don't think that'll keep up against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, so to recap, I recommended Colin Kaepernick as a start against the Patriots.
You did.
And he's going to, I think he's a huge garbage time MVP. Shout out to Kevin Nolan.
Right.
And I recommend Ryan Matthews should sit in your lineup. Anthony,
I said LeGarrette Blount. I even said Blake Bortles a little bit. And then I said stop, or at least bench Jordan Howard.
Yeah, you did. But that concludes our show. And I'm actually going to be...
You're gone.
I'm actually going to be on vacay for next week.
You're going to be on holiday.
Who's going to handle this show?
Well, I'm out on Tuesday as well.
Okay, well, it remains to be seen. A mystery, guys.
We love you guys.
We love you guys, but, I like my family too. So, yeah, but anyways, it's... I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a show, but that remains to be seen. I have nothing to do with what happens next week. Whatever happens next week, no, I don't know. I have nothing to do with it. But we like to thank you guys for tuning into the show. You can follow the show on a variety of platforms. Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, even on the website, gsmcpodcast.com. And you can also follow the show on a variety of social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That is at GSMC_football on Twitter and Instagram. And you can like the show on Facebook at the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. And as always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And I'm going to say happy Thanksgiving to you guys because I don't know. I'm not going to be back. I'm not sure what Anthony's going to do. But happy Thanksgiving to you, Anthony. I'm not going to see you for a week.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody listening.
All right. Have a good day, guys, and have a good weekend. And good luck to you guys' fantasy teams this weekend. And good luck. All right, guys. Have a good day.